Appendix. In order to establish certain points with some approach to accuracy, it is convenient to ascertain the facts by discussions, which could not find a place in the body of the work. Various legends taking their rise from apocryphal memoirs or from interested testimonies still current, and it is important to destroy them. If credence is to be allowed them, certain persons who make a trade of Napoleon relics would too easily find their account in them. Pretended writers who greatly resemble these dealers have already done so. I wish, therefore, in the appendices, which will be added to this volume, to study from actual documents certain particulars which seem to me of concern to history, or at least to historical curiosity. It is by this method only that it will be possible to ascertain that which concerns the private life of the emperor. I say private life because it is the word which the Vicomte E.M. de Vogüé has used to describe his studies. Those faithful to the great memory will value it. For myself, I'm convinced that this private life explains many points of the public life of Napoleon. Of such a man, it is desirable to know all the habits and ways. From my point of view, it is not unimportant to put them on record. There is none but throws some light on his character, and which is not ultimately worth the trouble of investigation. It is on this account that I renew in this place the appeal which I made to all who can furnish me with any facts bearing on the familiar life of Napoleon. Already important communications have been addressed to me when some of the articles which this volume contains appeared in the Revue de Famille. But there exists, I can have no doubt, a mass of documents which I have not seen, of unpublished recollections, of letters, of accounts from which light might be drawn, which separately appear without interest to their possessors, but which would largely help my investigations. I hope that those who kindly interest themselves in the matter will be good enough to point out such traces as they may know, or to inform me of their nature. I shall then not fail to complete these notes, or to correct any inaccuracies I may have fallen into. Wardrobe of the Emperor before 1811, that is to say, as long as Monsieur Remusat, first chamberlain, performed the duties of master of the wardrobe, no document has up to the present time allowed us fix completely and accurately the disposal and expenditure of the wardrobe. No doubt the papers relating to its management remained in his hands, and he neglected to deposit them in the archives of the crown. This registers of the articles which the Grand Marshal was ordered to verify and to identify after the dismissal of Monsieur Remusat ought to be forthcoming. But if these registers remain in the archives of the Grand Marshal, the latter after the death of Frederic, were dispersed in a remarkable manner, and a fortunate chance alone can have prevented their destruction. We are nevertheless justified at the present time in affirming that the memoirs of Madame de Remusat state what is not true when we read the expedition of Bonaparte on his toilette was placed on the budget of 40,000 francs. Sometimes it exceeded this amount. The toilet never stood on a budget for a higher figure than 20,000 francs, and it has become Monsieur Remusat had exceeded this figure and had accumulated a debt of 16,000 francs that he was dismissed on August 19th, 1811. That very day, the emperor orders the preparation of a complete and systematic inventory, and at the same time arranges the way in which renewals should be made. The reforms were to take place from that time only when the existing quantities of the different items should exceed the quantities which the stock ought to consist of, so that the stock should always be kept up. This inventory, according to the orders of Frederic, is divided into 4 parts. 1. Articles of dress and lace. 2. Articles of common and daily use. 3. Arms. 4. Jewels. The inventory of August 11th, 1811 forms the basis of this work. It is rendered complete. 1. By means of another register showing the disposal of the different articles up to the departure from Fontainebleau in 1814. 2. By the list of property drawn up by Masson at St. Helena the day after the death of the emperor. 3. As to certain points such as jewels, snuff boxes, by the inventory dictated and signed by Napoleon at Longwood, April 16th, 1821, in the list A. Attached to the will, 3, the emperor mentions 3 small cases of mahogany containing the first 33 snuff boxes of bonbonnières, the second 12 boxes with the imperial arms, 2 little magnifying glasses, and 4 boxes found on the table of Louis XVIII at the Tuileries, March 20th, 1815. The third, 3 snuff boxes ornamented with silver medals for the emperor's use in various toilet objects in accordance with lists numbered in 1, 2, and 3. These lists were not found attached to the will as proved and have remained unpublished. They nevertheless contain details relatively most complete, and these details have the special value as they proceed from the emperor himself. This result of the comparison of these four inventories is the identification of the objects possessed by the emperor from 1811 to 1821. Notes extracted from the memoranda of dealers and from different private documents are sufficient to establish the source of the greater part of the jewels and personal objects of value. Lastly, from the will, the lists attached and the list of the division made among the executors of the will, it has been shown what was intended disposal by the emperor of the relics of St. Helena. But this disposal, it has not been possible to follow further, although 80 years at the most separate us from the date of the funeral of the 5th of May, even of the most precious relics, those which the emperor intended for his son. It has not been possible, as might have wished to discover with complete certainty all the actual possessors. In 1835, the greater part of the objects left by the emperor to his son and confided by him to the executors of his will or to different members of his household were faithfully handed over to General Arrighi de Casanova, Duke de Padua, representative of Madame Mère, and the brothers and sisters of Napoleon. They were then divided and became dispersed throughout the entire world. In the second generation, fresh divisions were made. Besides this, the first possessors did not keep the shares complete. Objects forming part of them were dispersed, given away, or bequeathed. Many passed into public sales. In a word, the whole of the depositaries were not faithful or did not understand the obligation of the trust which they had received. Some, as the Grand Marshal Bertrand, disposed of the effects which had been confided to them in favor of the French government or of different museums. Others, like the Abbé Vignali or his heirs, put the objects in the Mont Piété, where they remain. Others, as Count Masson, seem to have disposed of them for their personal wants, of course. Of the result of all these facts is that the present work is necessarily incomplete, that it would be impossible to form a definite list of the Napoleon relics, except after an inquiry held simultaneously at Farnborough, at Brussels, at Pergamon, at Turin, at Rome, at Paris, at Stockholm, at Orenburg, at St. Petersburg, and all the towns of Italy, where at the present day are to be found settled descendants of Lucien Bonaparte, of King Joseph, of Queen Caroline, in the whole of Europe, and even in the United States. It is only those interested in the matter who can understand this inquiry. The list which we give them here will no doubt render it easier. At the same time, it will have the result of destroying a certain number of legends touching articles in the possession of private people. It may serve as the basis of a definitive list towards which the author of this book requests the united assistance of all.